6 years ago, my life fractured in a way I never thought possible. My name is David, and at 32, I own a chain of upscale restaurants in New York. To the outside world, I'm a success story, a self-made man who built an empire from nothing. But behind closed doors, my reality is far less glamorous. My family has never seen me as someone to be proud of. Instead, they've treated me like a shadow, always comparing me to my older brother, Lincoln, a financial director with a six-figure salary and a polished image that gleams brighter than any star. The rift began on a chilly Saturday afternoon, during a party celebrating Lincoln's promotion. It wasn't just another gathering, it was a spectacle of wealth and status, where everyone wore tailored suits and sipped champagne while exchanging stories of their achievements. I stood there, wearing my uniform, a crisp black shirt and apron, as I served hors d'oeuvres to guests who barely glanced at me. This wasn't part of my job description anymore, but it was a deliberate choice. 4 months, I had been working as a server at a 5-star restaurant to learn the intricacies of fine dining. I wanted to understand the pressure chefs endure, the precision servers must maintain, and the art of hospitality that transforms a meal into an experience. But no one knew this, not my parents, not my relatives. To them, I was still the failure who had abandoned a stable career in finance for what they deemed a lowly job. That day, however, everything unraveled. Uncle James, my father's younger brother, spotted me carrying trays of canapés. His eyes widened, then narrowed as if he couldn't believe what he was seeing. Later, he sent a photo of me in my uniform to my father, accompanied by a biting message. I thought David was some big success. Turns out he's just a server. And all this time you've been bragging that he works in finance and makes a great salary. What a joke. That night I was summoned home. The air in the living room was suffocating, thick with judgmental stares and unspoken accusations. My father sat stiffly on the couch, his face unreadable but his eyes blazing with fury. My mother wrung her hands nervously, glancing between him and me. Even Lincoln and his wife, Elena, were present, their expressions smug and condescending. When I walked in, my father didn't even greet me. He simply tossed his phone onto the coffee table, the screen displaying Uncle James' cruel words. "This is how far you've fallen?" my father said, his voice cutting through the silence like a blade. "You throw away a $120,000 a year job to become this?" I tried to explain, to tell them about the dream I shared with my college friends, about the restaurant we were planning to open, about the passion driving me forward. But before I could finish, Lincoln interrupted, his tone dripping with disdain. "This is insane, David. You had stability, respect, and now you're throwing it all away? Serving food isn't exactly something to aspire to." Elena chimed in next, her voice sharp and dismissive. "Right, David. Why would you grind away in a restaurant when you could have stayed in finance? It's such a waste of your potential." And then came the final blow, from my own mother. "Even if you do end up owning a restaurant," she said, her voice trembling with disappointment, "you're still just someone serving food to others. There's nothing to be proud of in a job that low." Each word felt like a dagger piercing my chest. I wanted to scream, to defend myself, to make them see that I wasn't failing. I was learning, growing, building something meaningful. But instead, I stood there, frozen, as my father delivered the ultimate verdict. "If you're not returning to your old job," he said coldly, "don't bother coming home again." The room spun around me. My knees threatened to buckle, but I forced myself to stay upright. I looked at each of them, my father's steely glare, my mother's tearful disapproval, Lincoln's smug smirk, and realized something painful: they didn't care about me. They only cared about appearances, about maintaining the illusion of perfection. That night, I left without a word. As I drove away from the house where I grew up, tears streamed down my face. The pain wasn't just about being rejected. It was about realizing that the people who were supposed to love me unconditionally saw me as nothing more than a disappointment. In the weeks that followed, I threw myself into my work. Every plate I carried, every customer I served became a step toward proving them wrong. I poured my heart into understanding the restaurant industry, determined to build something extraordinary. And though loneliness gnawed at me during holidays and family gatherings, I reminded myself why I had chosen this path. Deep down, I still hoped they would see me someday, not as the son who fell short of their expectations, but as the man who dared to chase his dreams. But hope wasn't enough. Slowly, I began to accept that the family I once knew was gone, replaced by strangers who cared more about titles than love. Walking away from my family that night was the hardest decision I've ever made. It wasn't just about losing their approval, it was about accepting that I would have to face the world alone. But even as I drove away from the house where I grew up, tears streaming down my face, I knew one thing for certain: I couldn't go back. Not to the life they wanted for me, not to the suffocating expectations that had weighed me down for years. The road ahead was anything but smooth. When I first started working as a server at a 5-star restaurant, I told myself it was temporary, a stepping stone toward building something greater. But what I didn't anticipate was how much it would test my resolve. Every day felt like a battle against exhaustion and self-doubt. Long hours on my feet, grueling shifts, and the constant pressure to perform perfectly chipped away at my confidence. And yet, with every challenge I learned. I absorbed everything: the way seasoned servers handled demanding guests, the precision of the kitchen staff, the art of creating an unforgettable dining experience. By the time I left that job 6 months later, I had gained more than just knowledge. I had developed a vision. A vision for the heritage, a restaurant that wouldn't just serve food but would celebrate culinary craftsmanship in its purest form. It was a dream I shared with Anthony and Sophia, two of my closest friends from college. Together, we poured our hearts into making it a reality. But dreams don't come cheap. We pooled our savings, $500,000 in total, and still found ourselves short. The space we wanted in Greenwich Village came with a hefty price tag, and outfitting it with high-end kitchen equipment and elegant interior design drained our budget faster than we expected. To cover the rest, we took out a $500,000 loan, knowing full well the risks involved. That first year was brutal. Rent payments loomed over us like a storm cloud, and the fear of failure kept me awake at night. Then there was the competition. Greenwich Village is a culinary hub, home to some of New York's finest restaurants. Convincing diners to choose the heritage over established names felt like trying to climb a mountain with no gear. But we refused to give up. Using my connections from my finance days, I invited former colleagues and clients to try our food, hoping their positive word of mouth would help spread the word. Anthony, who had a background in public relations, worked tirelessly to get us featured in local magazines and blogs. Meanwhile, Sophia leveraged her marketing expertise to organize events, wine tastings, jazz nights, and intimate VIP dinners that drew people in and gave them a reason to stay. Slowly but surely, things began to turn around. Our menu became our greatest asset. Each dish was crafted not just to satisfy hunger but to evoke emotion. We combined bold flavors with artistic presentation, ensuring every plate told a story. Guests began to notice. They praised not only the food but also the service, the kind of warmth and attentiveness that made them feel valued. By the end of the first year, the heritage wasn't just surviving, it was thriving. But success didn't erase the loneliness. Holidays were the hardest. While others celebrated with loved ones, I sat alone in my apartment, scrolling through social media and seeing photos of my family gathered together. There were moments when I wondered if I'd made the wrong choice, if sacrificing my relationship with them had been worth it. Yet, whenever doubt crept in, I reminded myself why I had started this journey in the first place. 3 years after opening, we paid off the last of our loans. It was a milestone none of us thought we'd reach so quickly. What started as a single restaurant in Greenwich Village had grown into a brand respected across New York. Encouraged by our success, we decided to expand. Opening new locations came with its own set of challenges: finding the right spaces, hiring and training staff, maintaining consistency, but each branch brought us closer to fulfilling our mission, bringing fine dining to everyone who appreciated it, no matter where they lived. 6 years later, the heritage had 4 thriving locations, in Manhattan, Brooklyn, Queens, and the Bronx. Each one reflected the neighborhood it served while staying true to our core values. For the first time in years, I allowed myself to feel proud, not just of what we had built but of how far we had come. And then, one Saturday afternoon, everything changed again. I was making one of my unannounced visits to our Brooklyn location, something I did regularly to ensure quality control. As I walked through the kitchen, one of the servers rushed up to me, panic in her voice. "One of our staff accidentally spilled wine on a guest," she said. "They're furious." I followed her to the VIP section, ready to handle the situation myself. But when I stepped inside, my blood ran cold. Sitting there, staring at me with expressions of shock and disbelief, were my parents, Lincoln, Elena, and a few other relatives. For a moment, no one spoke. Then Lincoln broke the silence, his tone dripping with sarcasm. "So this is what you've been doing all these years? Managing a restaurant?" His words stung, but I forced myself to stay calm. Before I could respond, my father chimed in, his voice laced with disdain. "If I'd known you worked here as a server, I wouldn't have come. This is embarrassing." My mother added, her tone heavy with disappointment, "It's shameful to have a child working in a restaurant." Their words hit me like a punch to the gut. But before I could say anything, Ryan, the manager, stepped forward and addressed them directly. "Sir, madam, this isn't just any restaurant. David is the owner. The room fell silent. All eyes turned to me, waiting for my reaction. And in that moment, I realized the truth. No matter how far I had come, to them, I would always be the son who failed to live up to their expectations. The moment I walked into the VIP section and saw my family staring at me in disbelief, I knew things were about to get complicated. My father's cold dismissal. If I had known you worked here as a server, I wouldn't have come. It's embarrassing. Still lingered in the air, heavy with disdain. But what came next was something I hadn't anticipated. Their sudden transformation when they realized I wasn't just another employee, I was the owner of the heritage. Elena, who moments ago had been condescending and demanding compensation for the spilled wine, abruptly shifted gears. Her voice softened into an unnaturally sweet tone, her smile forced but radiant. "Oh, David," she began, leaning forward slightly as if trying to bridge some invisible gap between us, "about that little incident earlier, it really wasn't a big deal. Accidents happen, right?" She laughed nervously, glancing around the table for support. One of my uncles chimed in, his tone equally fake. "Yes, we were just saying how proud we are of you. Look at this place, it's truly top class. Your parents must be so proud." I didn't respond immediately. Instead, I let their words hang there, each syllable dripping with insincerity. Their attempt to rewrite history, to erase the insults they'd hurled at me moments before, was almost laughable. Almost. Then my father spoke, his voice laced with false casualness but carrying the weight of a command. "About tonight's meal, you should comp it for the family. We're all kin after all." Lincoln followed up quickly, puffing out his chest like he was presenting a groundbreaking business proposal. "And while you're at it, give me a VIP card. Top tier, obviously. After tonight, I can bring in many new clients for you. It'll be good for business." He smirked, clearly expecting me to jump at the suggestion. Maybe it's time to cut me in on the profits. Call it a family partnership. For a moment I said nothing. I simply stood behind the register, scanning their faces, the same people who had called me a disgrace, a failure unworthy of respect. Now they sat there, smiling through gritted teeth, pretending they had always believed in me. That's when I laughed. A loud, unrestrained laugh that filled the room, echoing off the walls. It wasn't mocking or bitter, it was free. When the laughter faded, I looked at each of them, my voice calm but firm. "Are you people out of your minds?" I asked, shaking my head slowly. "After everything you said, everything you did, now you want a free meal? A VIP card? A share of my business?" They froze, unsure how to respond. "No," I continued, my tone colder now. "Not only do I not owe any of you a damn thing, but if any of you keep standing here making demands—" I paused, nodding toward the computer at the register where live security footage was displayed. "I'll send the footage from earlier, when you were all insulting me, to Mr. Thomas's inbox. Let's see if he still wants to keep a director like you, Lincoln." The color drained from Lincoln's face. Elena clutched her purse tighter, her eyes darting away. My parents remained silent, their expressions unreadable but unmistakably guilty. They knew, they understood exactly what they had done. No one said another word. They paid in full, not a single cent discounted, and walked out of the restaurant one by one, not daring to look back. Once they were gone, I retreated to my office, shutting the door behind me. Leaning against it, I closed my eyes and exhaled deeply. The encounter replayed in my mind, frame by frame, their cruel words, their desperate attempts to save face, and finally, the stunned silence when I revealed the truth. But what struck me most was the realization of how far I had come. 6 years ago, I would have crumbled under their criticism, internalizing every insult as though it defined me. But today I stood tall, unshaken by their judgment. I had built something extraordinary without their approval, and nothing could take that away from me. Still, the confrontation left me unsettled. Not because of their behavior, I expected no less, but because of the stark contrast between their treatment of me as a server versus as an owner. To them, respect wasn't earned through hard work or character. It was tied to titles, wealth, and appearances. As I sat there, reflecting on the events, I thought about Mr. Thomas's arrival. His presence had been both unexpected and pivotal. Sensing the tension in the room, he had greeted everyone politely before turning his attention to me, addressing me with genuine warmth and respect. "Well, if it isn't the owner of the heritage. It's been a while, David." The entire table fell silent, their shock palpable. For once, I wasn't the black sheep or the disappointment. I was someone whose accomplishments commanded admiration, even from those who mattered most in Lincoln's world. A month had passed since the confrontation at the Brooklyn branch. I thought that would be the end of it, our paths diverging forever, their judgment fading into the background of my life. But family, it seems, has a way of refusing to let go, even when letting go is the most compassionate thing they could do. It started with a call from my father. His name flashed on my phone screen, but I didn't answer. Minutes later, my mother called. Again, I stayed silent. Then came the text message. Next week is Mom's birthday. Come home, okay? Everyone's hoping you'll be there. I stared at the screen, reading the sentence over and over again. My heart wasn't racing anymore. It wasn't filled with anger or sadness either. Instead, I felt something else, a deep, aching weariness. Was this an invitation born out of love, or was it simply another reminder that I was useful only when I had money, status, influence? I didn't reply. I didn't go. But I did send a gift, a luxury jewelry set worth $2,000, delivered to my mother's doorstep on the morning of her birthday. Alongside it, I included a note written in clear, deliberate handwriting. I stopped being your son 6 years ago. This is my last gift. Please cherish it. No anger, no resentment, just a final goodbye as soft as a sigh. After that, I blocked every form of contact. Phone calls, texts, social media, I cut them all off. No more waiting, no more hoping. I had given so much of myself year after year, trying to maintain even the smallest connection. But in return, what I needed most, love, respect, acceptance, never came. And sometimes, letting go is the only way left to protect the last piece of dignity a child can hold on to. But they didn't stop. Every few weeks, my parents, Lincoln, Elena, and even some extended relatives began showing up at the Brooklyn branch. They asked the staff if I was around, pretending to casually drop by for a meal. But I had already instructed my team, whenever they come, say, he's not here. I wasn't hiding, I just didn't want to face them anymore. Some relatives must have heard the whole story from my parents because now I receive messages calling me cold-hearted and ungrateful. One uncle even wrote, "How dare you treat your own family this way? You've changed. You're not the David we used to know." And maybe he was right. I wasn't the same David anymore, the one who bent backward to please everyone, who swallowed insults and pretended everything was fine. That version of me was gone. Still, their words stung. Each message carried the weight of their judgment, their disappointment, their inability to see me for who I truly was. Friends who knew the full story told me I had done the right thing, that I finally stood up for myself, set boundaries with people who had only ever taken and never given back. But truthfully, I didn't care about anyone's judgment anymore. Because now I lived for me. In those quiet moments, alone in my office or late at night when the city slept, I found myself reflecting on everything that had happened. What was family supposed to mean? Was it supposed to be a place where you're loved unconditionally, where your success or failure doesn't define your worth? Or was it just another arena where power dynamics played out, where children became pawns in their parents' quests for pride and validation? For years, I had carried the hope that someday they would see me, not as a failure, not as a shadow of my brother, but as someone who dared to chase his dreams despite the odds. Someone who worked tirelessly, who built something extraordinary from nothing. But now I understood, real family should love you unconditionally. It shouldn't matter whether you're a CEO or a server, rich or struggling, you're still respected. You still have a place to come home to. I didn't have that. And while it hurt, I had learned to accept it. More importantly, I had learned how to build a new kind of family, one rooted in respect, empathy, and genuine connection. My friends, my colleagues, the loyal guests who returned to the heritage time and again, they were my chosen family. And perhaps that was enough. One evening, as I sat reviewing reports in my office, Ryan, the manager of the Brooklyn branch, knocked on the door. "David," he said hesitantly, "there's something you need to know. Your parents, they're here again. They're asking for you." I sighed, setting down my pen. "Tell them what I always tell you to say," I replied calmly. "I'm not here." Ryan nodded and left, closing the door behind him. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the ceiling. Their persistence was exhausting, but it no longer shook me the way it once did. Because now I knew the truth, they weren't coming to see me, they were coming to see the image they wanted me to be. A successful business owner, a source of pride they could brag about to their friends. Not the person I was, but the role they expected me to play. And I refused to play it anymore. That night, as I walked through the empty restaurant after closing hours, I paused by the window overlooking the city. The lights twinkled like stars scattered across the horizon. For the first time in years, I felt a sense of peace. Not happiness, not joy, but peace. I realized that forgiveness wasn't something I owed them. Closure wasn't something they deserved. What mattered most was protecting the version of myself that had fought so hard to survive. The David who had walked away from a stable job to chase a dream, The David who had faced rejection and judgment without crumbling. The David who had built an empire not for approval but for passion. And maybe, just maybe, letting go wasn't about forgetting, it was about choosing to live fully, freely, without looking back. Months have passed since I last saw my family at the Brooklyn branch. Their visits became less frequent after that final confrontation, but they never stopped entirely. Occasionally, I'd hear from one of the staff that my parents or Lincoln had come by again, asking if I was around. But I always gave the same instruction: tell them I'm not here. It wasn't about hiding, it was about choosing peace over chaos, dignity over compromise. Each time I thought about their faces, the way they shifted from disdain to desperation when they realized who I was, I felt a mix of emotions. Anger, sadness, pity, but also clarity. They weren't coming back for me, they were coming back for the version of me they wanted to see. A successful businessman, a source of pride they could parade in front of their friends. Not the David who dared to dream differently, who chose a path they couldn't understand. And maybe that's why forgiveness feels so distant. Because forgiveness isn't just about forgetting, it's about believing the other person has changed, that they've earned the right to be let back in. But what if they haven't? What if, deep down, they're still the same people who called me a disgrace 6 years ago? I don't know the answers to these questions. Not yet, anyway. But I do know this: I've stopped waiting for them to change. Instead, I've focused on changing myself, on building a life rooted in authenticity, respect, and purpose. Every night before bed, I sit by the window of my apartment overlooking Manhattan. The city never sleeps, its lights flickering like stars scattered across the horizon. Some nights, I think about what might have been, if I had stayed in finance, if I had given up on my dream, if I had tried harder to win their approval. Would things be different now? Would I still feel this emptiness during the holidays, scrolling through social media and seeing photos of families gathered together while I sit alone? But then I remind myself of everything I've built: the restaurants, the loyal guests, the friendships that have become my chosen family. These are the things that matter. These are the relationships I've nurtured, not out of obligation but because they bring joy and meaning to my life. Sometimes, late at night, I wonder what it means to truly forgive someone. Is it about letting go of anger, or is it about accepting that some wounds will never fully heal? For years, I carried the hope that one day my family would see me, not as a failure, not as a shadow of my brother, but as someone who dared to chase his dreams despite the odds. Someone who worked tirelessly, who built something extraordinary from nothing. But now, I realize that forgiveness doesn't mean giving them another chance to hurt me. It means releasing the hold they once had on my heart. It means understanding that love shouldn't come with conditions, that real love should celebrate your successes and support you through failures without judgment. And perhaps that's the hardest lesson of all, to accept that sometimes, the people who should love you most are the ones who fail you completely. As I reflect on everything that's happened, I find myself thinking about you, the person reading this story. If you've ever felt unseen, unloved, or undervalued by those closest to you, then maybe my journey will resonate with you. Maybe you'll recognize parts of yourself in my struggles, my choices, my pain. So here's my question to you: if you were me, what would you do? Would you forgive? Would you go back? Or would you choose to walk away in silence like I did? I don't expect an easy answer because there isn't one. Life is messy, complicated, full of gray areas where right and wrong blur into each other. But if there's one thing I've learned, it's this: you deserve to live a life true to yourself. Don't chase someone else's approval at the cost of your own happiness. Because in the end, real love, the kind that matters, never requires you to prove yourself to earn it. The truth is, I may never reconcile with my family. And that's okay. Because I've found something far more valuable than their acceptance: my own self-worth. Today, I wake up every morning knowing exactly who I am and what I stand for. I run my business not for validation but because it brings me joy. I surround myself with people who celebrate my successes and lift me up during failures. And though the road ahead may still hold challenges, I face them with courage, knowing I no longer need to carry the weight of someone else's expectations. To anyone out there who feels lost, who feels like they'll never measure up, let me leave you with this: you are enough. Your worth isn't defined by titles, money, or the opinions of others. It's defined by the love and respect you give to yourself, and the kindness you extend to the world. Before I close this chapter, I want to thank you for listening, for sharing in my story, for allowing me to pour my heart out in the hope that it might touch yours. If something in these words resonates with you, if it stirs even the smallest part of your soul, please share it with someone who needs to hear it. Because everyone deserves to know they're not alone. This is where my story ends, for now. But the journey continues both for me and for you. So tell me, what will you choose? Forgiveness? Reconciliation? or silence, goodbye for now. And until we meet again, live boldly, love deeply, and stay true to yourself.